This Sunday marks the second anniversary of the Rohingya crisis. 2 years ago, an estimated 700,000 Rohingyas fled across the border to Bangladesh after being subjected to brutal violence and killings. The Rohingyas, a Muslim ethnic group from Myanmar, have never been recognised by the government as a separate group and do not have full citizenship. 2 years on, most are still stateless in refugee camps, 50% of them children. UNICEF is now calling on the government of Myanmar to establish conditions that would allow Rohingya refugees to return to their homes as soon as possible. The singer and podcaster Jessie Ware visited Cox's Bazar, the biggest refugee camp in Bangladesh, with UNICEF in December 2017, and she's here now to talk about then and now. Jessie, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Take us back to what you saw and heard when you were there.
So I went in December 2017, and when I went there, it was a few months post the kind of influx, the mass exodus of the 700,000 Rohingya refugees. So the camps were chaotic. They were overwhelmed, and UNICEF were on the ground trying to provide just immediate support in, sanitation, basic needs such as sanitation, nutrition, safety, opening up child-friendly spaces for children to be able to go and be children and feel safe and to talk and to deal with some of the trauma that they'd experienced. I mean, some of these children have witnessed the most unspeakable horrors, seen their families be butchered in front of them, and then had to make the mass exodus to Bangladesh on their own, walking for sometimes months. And so children are very vulnerable. They were very vulnerable in the camps. And so I saw some of the amazing work that UNICEF were doing to try and help women and children to kind of survive.
And how palpable was that vulnerability and what they'd experienced? I mean, how were you able to see and hear what they'd gone through?
So when I attended one of the UNICEF child-friendly spaces, I met with a 16-year-old girl called Manara, who had watched both her parents be killed in front of her. And she'd escaped with her siblings, but had lost her siblings along the way. So she'd entered this camp on her own, aged 16, has lost her whole family, is completely vulnerable. Miraculously bumped into her cousin at one of the kind of check-in desks, so had managed to find a family member. And she was attending this child-friendly space, I think, to just try and relearn how to be a child again, and also to talk and deal with her trauma. I saw in those child-friendly spaces drawings that children had done when they just entered the camps. And the scenes that they were drawing, stick men with machetes, their villages on fire, people, stick men hanging in trees, helicopters flying over. And I just can't believe that children are having to experience this, and then this is what they're drawing, and it's living. So, UNICEF were really helping with the psychosocial care. And this is 2 stories of over 1 million. All these people have just seen the most unspeakable things.
The reason that UNICEF gets people like you to go to these places is to give those people effectively a voice. How much of a responsibility do you feel with that?
I feel incredibly grateful that UNICEF kind of have invited me to be an ambassador and to use my platform to share these stories of these poor people with other people and with my audience, And if I can tell those stories and explain how, when people donate, where their money goes to and how these people are being affected, then, I feel incredibly grateful to be able to have that.
I mean, it's a situation that has been reported on, and quite a lot, but it's not been as high profile as some other situations, humanitarian crises that we see. How do you feel about that as it's unfolded over the 2 years since it began?
I mean, the UN have called it a genocide. And, it's 2 years on, and I really appreciate you doing a piece about this. This is marking the anniversary. And, small things have changed, but it's more about the fact that these people are in a state of limbo. They're not allowed to go back to Myanmar. They're not allowed to be legal citizens of Bangladesh. So they are in a constant state of limbo. So what UNICEF is trying to do is to provide a more kind of structured, formal education for these children who, this is where their life is now, and they don't know what the future holds. So to kind of allow them to be children, to give them an education so they can have some hope for the future.
And I mean, obviously you were there at the beginning, but did you feel that in those sort of child spaces that there was an element of them perhaps being able to start to get some sort of a protected childhood back?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there was definitely a contrast to the drawings that you saw when these kids initially entered the camps, to children, the girls kind of sitting together, drawing very ornate flowers. They were singing. You know, I went to one of the UNICEF learning centres where the children were treating it like going to school every day. And they were safe, and they were so proud to sing to me and show me their work. And I saw them being able to be children and smiling, which you don't see that much. I think what's so obvious in these camps is so many of the children are vulnerable. And, you know, 97% of the adolescents over 14s are not attending educational centres there, the child-friendly spaces or the learning centres. And they are so vulnerable to child trafficking, violence, drugs, and child labour. So it's about just kind of trying to protect these children as much as possible. And when I saw in these spaces, it was, they were able to be children again. And of course, they're going to remember what's happened, but at least they, you know.
So how much of an issue is that then, an outflow of kids from these refugee camps?
What, the child trafficking?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't comment too much about that, but I mean, it's something
they're aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're trying to encourage them to attend these educational spaces so that they can be safe, so they can be monitored in a caring pastoral way.
So the situation now is that there are talks around potentially 3,450 initially going back. This is a move that UNHCR has said is an acknowledgement that the right to return is being recognised.
Yes.
How do you view that?
I mean, it's a small improvement, but there are over 1 million Rohingya in those refugee camps. So 3,450 is a small compromise, but, you know, they're still not being granted legal citizenship. When I spoke to many of the refugees, they were scared about returning home because it's uncertain what the conditions will be. You know, UNICEF wants the Myanmar government and the Bangladeshi government to establish conditions where the Rohingyas can return willingly and safely. And it's very uncertain what they're about to enter back into if they go back to Myanmar.
Jessie.
So lots of them want to stay.
Yeah, Jessie, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, leaving your car engine running while you're not moving is a major cause of